Hey, thanks for tuning in to All Things Division Three Soccer. As you know, I sometimes dabble in other things than Division Three, and I call it Injured Time. And on this episode of Injured Time is a part of my interview with Peter Wilt, man who has the depth and breadth of soccer knowledge that very few have. Turned out to be a very long Friday night where we just sat and talked about a whole range of issues. And because it was so long, I decided I would create multiple videos. And this is one of those parts of the interview. Hope you enjoy it. You could look for the full interview later on. I'll put out the whole thing. But until then, hope you enjoy this interview with Peter Wilt. The first of all, let me just say whatever I can. The fact that Bob Gansler is not in the Wisconsin Athletic Hall of Fame to me is egregious. Is egregious because again, coming back from my days, right, and yours, right, he was it. Like there was, hey, who's U.S. Soccer? It's Bob Gansler. It's on his shoulders. I can't remember how many years it seemed like he was carrying the weight of the future of U.S. soccer on his shoulders.
And he did it at every level. He
Yeah,
did it as a player,
yeah,
Chicago Mustangs, U.S. national team. As a coach, he did it at the high school level, winning state championships in Wisconsin. The collegiate level at UW Milwaukee, incredibly successful there. And then obviously at the national team level, taking the U.S. to the World Cup for the first time in 40 years in 1990. And then at the MLS level, giving the Kansas City
yeah, yeah.
MLS team their
Kicked him
first
off.
MLS Cup. It
Yeah,
was against the Chicago Fire. It was my team in 2000. It was one of the most difficult losses I've ever had. I remember going down to our bench after the game for the trophy ceremony, getting our second place medals, and sitting on the bench and looking at Kansas City getting the MLS Cup trophy back when it weighed,
yeah.
200 pounds. Is the Alan
The
Rothenberg
Alan
trophy at the
Rothenberg
time.
ball. Like that's because
Yeah, it was solid metal, man. That thing was heavy. But I was sitting there watching as Bob Gansler got the trophy and thinking, well, at least he got his.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
That
yeah,
made me happy.
yeah,
As down and dejected as I was
yeah,
about not winning, I was really sincerely happy
yeah.
about that man getting his
Yeah,
just due.
yeah, yeah. And how fitting, right? Like again, he took us through the wilderness, right? In a lot of respects, to get us to get a trophy of his own like that. That's I think is.
So, quick story for you. He was a top candidate to be the first Chicago Fire head coach in 1997 for the 1998 season. He was in the five finalists, and truth be told, he was one of the three finalists.
Mm-hmm.
And Fernando Clavijo was one of the others, and obviously Bob Bradley, who
Mm-hmm.
ended up getting the position. Um, and Bob called me up afterwards. I can't remember if it was a phone call or in person. It might have been in person because I do remember having a breakfast with him
Mm-hmm.
just a couple blocks from where I'm sitting now in Whitefish Bay, Wisconsin. And I remember him asking me, "Can you tell me the truth? Did I not get it because of my age?"
Mm-hmm.
And that took me aback because
Yeah,
it was the furthest thing from my mind.
yeah,
If anything, his age was reflective of the wisdom and experience and
yeah,
success that he had over his career. Um, it was more because Bob
Yeah.
To me, was obviously positioned
Yeah.
with his experience with Bruce
Yeah.
Arena
Yeah.
at DC United. He knew how to
Yeah.
build a winner,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it was Bob Bradley's abilities more so than Bob
And,
Gansler. I had
and you were
multiple
validated
good
with that. Well,
choices.
multiple teams are always validated by
Yeah,
Bob, right?
yeah,
Like
yeah.
it just it's
Yeah, it's people when they don't get a position or accomplish something sometimes think of themselves as losing out when the truth can be there's multiple
yeah.
good choices,
Yeah. Yeah.
and two, some of the best things that happen to you in life
Yeah.
seem like bad things at the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. 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 It's what's interesting about that is a lot of people, you know, only think of, oh, there's, this is the best worst choice you can make, but there's also the best good choice you can make, right? Converse, like you could have in those three instances, those three names you mentioned for head coach, you don't lose. You don't lose with any of those. You know what I mean? Like you pick any one of those, you're going to win. And now you're just trying to figure out what's the difference between, and if it's just slight edge. Oh, Bob knows how to build a winner. DC, Bruce Arena knows the inner mechanisms, how things are, how we have to start from nothing. All of those different things is just the advantage, right? And you're like, okay, that's the best good that I can pick. I
Yeah.
think people forget that.
One other accomplishment that I want to make sure I get in for Bob
Uh huh.
Gansler, he also won the A League championship, the second division
Yeah.
championship as head coach of the Milwaukee Rampage. So,
Uh,
I mean, if you're looking for Wisconsin
yeah. Yeah.
successes,
Yeah.
my goodness,
Yeah.
how many coaches in the state of Wisconsin have brought national professional championships to the state?
Yeah.
It's a short
It's
list.
got to be.
Vince Lombardi,
Vince Lombardi would be one.
Curly Lambeau.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, a bunch of Green Bay guys.
Yeah. 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 Remarkable. Anyhow, I just think that to me is egregious. Like there's that's in any sport, right? If anyone accomplishes what he accomplished, would
Yeah.
be, yeah, worthy. So,
All right, tangent that you're welcome to edit this out, but as we're talking, it got me thinking, okay, baseball championships in Milwaukee. So the Brewers have never won a World Series. They got to one in '82 and lost to the Cardinals in 7 games. The Milwaukee Braves won the World Series over the Yankees in 7 games in 1957. And so I'm trying to think, well, okay, who was their manager? And for someone like me, and I'm a baseball nut from that
yeah,
era, I should absolutely just know who the manager was.
yeah,
And instead, I'm thinking to myself, I think it was Charlie Dressen, but I'm not 100% sure. And that's sad that I don't know that for sure. If only there was an electronic instrument that we could look up the information.
yeah. I'm actually looking now. We lost.
Fred Haney, maybe. It could have been Fred Haney. Fred Haney or Charlie Dressen. Those are probably the two options. I'm going to go with Fred Haney.
All right.
Final answer.
No, let's see. What year? What year?
1957. The Braves won the the National League pennant in '57 and '58. Played the Yankees in the World Series both years. The Braves won in '57, lost in '58.
Who was your pick? Fred Haney?
Fred Haney. Yeah.
Winner, winner, chicken dinner. Managed by Fred Haney for the Milwaukee Braves. Not the Braves won the World Series that year against the New York Yankees. I gotta say, I am not a baseball guy. I know nothing of baseball. I played for a year when I was a kid, and then moved to Spain where we weren't playing baseball anymore. I am always amazed at the depth of knowledge that most real, serious baseball fans have around statistics and who and when. Just remarkable, and I don't know why that is, but it's a
I
very
think it's because of the
baseball-y
history.
thing. Yeah, it's a
The
very
historic elements, A, it's been around so long, and B, statistically, there have not been so many dramatic changes in the sport that to a certain extent it's fair to compare eras
Yeah, yeah.
and athletes from different eras.
That's interesting.
Um, it's not a blanket
Yeah,
statement, but I think that allows for
yeah.
comparisons. Um, the pace of the game allows for storytelling by the broadcasters
Broadcasters,
as
yeah,
well as conversations by the
yeah,
fans.
yeah,
So I think there's reasons for it.
yeah. All right, so this is not a baseball channel. So let me go back to something I did want to um, ask you about. Maybe I should do a baseball channel, though. I am a YouTube influencer, Peter, so I could influence. Um, you are as of late you've been a how should I say proponent, advocate, creator of this notion of a community club. Before we talk about USL and all the things USL that I want to get into, I did want to add, because I find it very interesting. Could you just give a brief, and not even brief, whatever, an explanation as to what your vision of a community club looks like?
Essentially built from the bottom up, not the
Mm-hmm.
top down.
Mm-hmm.
That's the short version of it. I think too many sports teams in America are top down, in part because of the ownership structure in America. There are not, other than the Green Bay Packers, there are not public ownership groups. And whether it's the owner of the team or the top management, they too often think the club is about them. When in reality, sports teams are community assets that are representative of the community they serve. And so the team should be a reflection of the people in the place where it represents. In the rest of the world, the soccer teams, many of them are owned by the community itself. And even when it's not, if it's a private ownership, earlier on it
Mm-hmm.
started as a community club and representative of those communities. The other thing that factors into it is the lack of geographic monopolies in soccer in the
Mm-hmm.
rest of the world. Where in the U.S., at least in MLS and USL, and then
There
NFL,
is, yeah.
NBA, NHL, you're buying a territorial monopoly. And so you don't have many instances of multiple teams in the same league to compete with fans, which means you don't have teams that are forced to create an identity that reflects the community. There's a subsegment of the
Correct.
community that they're serving. It's manifested when I start teams in the process I go about starting the team.
Mm-hmm.
I identify, for lack of a better term, influencers in the
Mm-hmm.
area,
Yeah,
and I sit down and I meet with them, and not just soccer community. I mean, that's the obvious one, and yes, don't overlook the soccer
yeah.
influencers.
That would be a bad decision if you did,
Yes, it
but
would. Yes, it would. But it's also social organizations, other sports, governmental agencies, businesses, charitable nonprofit
yeah,
organizations. And you listen to them. I mean, you explain what you're trying to do in timelines and venue options, and then you listen. You ask them questions. What's important to them? What makes this town special? What do you like about this town? What don't you like about this town? And then listen. That does a couple things. One, if you're not from that town, and even if you are, it helps inform you of what type of club you should be starting and what people care about in the town. And it also makes these influencers feel like you care about them,
mm-hmm.
and it gives them a heightened sense of involvement in the team, and they will more likely promote you in a positive way when they're talking about
Yeah.
the team down the road. So I think that's really helpful. and I wish more leagues in this country had that aspect of an open system.
Yeah.
And I'm really, and I know we'll talk more about USL, and I'm really excited about promotion, relegation potentially happening there. But to be a true open system, it needs to get rid of geographic monopolies.
Yeah.
Um, we have a couple examples. I think the best thing that ever happened to the Metro Stars Red Bulls was NYCFC coming in.
CFC.
It
Totally agree. Totally agree.
All of a sudden,
Mm.
the Jersey boys are saying, "Wait a minute,
Yeah.
yeah, oh no, this is my team,
Yeah. Yeah.
not you guys across the river." And so, yeah, maybe they lost a couple thousand
Yeah.
fans a game that were coming from Manhattan or
Yeah.
Long Island or whatever, but whatever. They gained pride of the Jersey
Yeah.
fan base. And then similarly, I mean, in baseball, it's Cubs and White Sox. You get the blue collar South
Yeah.
Side and more ethnic the North Side, white collar, um, and
Galaxy
uh,
LAFC too. Like that's another one I think was really.
absolutely, it's a good thing. And um, obviously London's got a dozen or so
Yeah.
pro teams. Manchester's got half a dozen. Buenos Aires, I think, has 18 pro
Yeah.
teams, and they all represent different geographic areas. They represent oftentimes different socioeconomic groups or religious or political groups, or styles of play even, and that's a good thing. When I started Indy 11, I learned, and I had barely even been to Indianapolis before I started that team, but I met quite a bit of different people representing different aspects of the market, and I found that it's not surprisingly a little bit more conservative than a lot of urban areas, but most of all, I found how prideful they are. I guess I'm not sure prideful is a word.
In a good way.
Proud is a
Yeah.
word.
Proud. Yeah.
But they're prideful of Indianapolis
Mm-hmm.
because people on the outside don't realize what a cool city it is
Yeah.
and what history it has.
Yeah.
Yeah. Similar with Orlando.
Yeah.
I never realized Orlando had an old timey downtown.
Yeah.
I thought it was just Disney
Pittsburgh.
World.
Pittsburgh is another one reminds you that way. Same thing.
Absolutely. And so a lot of local pride. And it's almost like they're defensive or they have a chip on their
Yeah.
shoulder.
Yeah.
So we played into that quite a bit with Indy 11. And also when we were soliciting names from the public before choosing ultimately Indy 11. And the names they were coming up with were almost all military names. I mean, a lot of, and not just because there must be a lot of Arsenal fans there,
Yeah. Yeah.
but as it turned out, and we did our research, it's the number one military volunteerism state in the country
Oh
on a
wow.
per capita basis, going back to Civil War days for sure, and maybe even before that. And so we ended up naming the team 11, not necessarily, obviously it's 11 players on a field, but because there was a famous military regiment in the Civil War called the 11th Infantry Regiment, led by General Lew Wallace, who ended up writing the book Ben-Hur, and he became governor of, New Mexico. He left Indiana at one point. But that was the backstory of Indy 11. And then the team colors reflected the municipal flag colors for the city of Indianapolis. Our uniforms this first couple years, or the whole time I was there anyways, were checkerboard to reflect the racing
Yeah. Yeah. Best
history there.
jerseys around, by the way. Still, I think if you did a pick of best jerseys in the history of U.S. soccer,
Yeah.
that ranks. That ranks.
Yeah, yeah. Fans of my next team, Forward Madison, would argue with you about that, but I would not. I agree. I think the Indy 11 checkerboard jerseys are pretty special. But Madison is another example. A very different market, quite the opposite, actually. Incredibly liberal community
Yep.
because of the university. It's a state capital. Even the older people in Madison are young of spirit. They're leftover hippies from the
Yeah.
60s. And it's also a quirky city, which somewhat plays into the youth, but more than that. They're proud of being a bit offbeat.
Yeah.
And so we went, and this was from listening to the fans, with a quirky icon for our logo. We went with the word forward, Forward Madison, as the name. Forward is a state motto. It goes back to a gentleman named Bob LaFollette, who's a U.S. Senator from Wisconsin,
Yeah.
Fighting Bob. And he was one of the
Quite
leaders
one of the
of the
characters of the progressive movement.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, yes, he started the progressive. He ran for president, I believe, 5 times
Yeah.
under the Progressive Party. So Forward plays homage to that. And then for the icon, we're like, well, Forward isn't really a tangible thing. Let's come up with an icon that we can make a logo around. And a number of fans had suggested the flamingos. And not just any flamingos, but plastic pink flamingos, the lawn ornaments.
Is that really?
Yeah.
Are you so-
So you don't even know this story, and that's
No,
what
I
makes it
don't.
so wonderful.
I
Is
have
that
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
people outside of Madison don't see the connection. A northern climate city, why would you have a plastic pink flamingo as it? Well, it goes back historically in Madison to 1979 when the student government, or the student body of University of Wisconsin, elected a president and vice president, and I think other officers to their student body, student government, from the Pail and Shovel Party, which was kind of a joke party. So these guys, great senses of humor, decided almost as a joke to run for office, and they won. They ran a funny campaign, and the students were like, I don't really care, I'm going to vote for these guys.
Yeah.
And one of the first things they did is they pulled a prank on the dean of students, and on Bascom Hill, which is the big hill in front of the dean's building and such, they placed 1,000 plastic pink flamingos on the hill. It got huge media coverage.
Oh my God. Oh,
It became a thing.
that is
And then
awesome.
the students would walk by and they'd take a couple flamingos for their dorm room or their apartments. And so there's over 1,000 plastic pink flamingos around Madison in the fall of 1979, and they stayed there for many years. And then it became a thing. People would then start buying them, and stores would start selling them. And to this day, you drive around Madison, you'll see plastic pink flamingos, and you go to their zoo, there's flamingos there. And somewhere around 2013, I think, the city council for Madison, Wisconsin, voted the plastic pink flamingo as the official city bird of Madison. So there. And now, so we name our logo or icon for the team a plastic pink flamingo, and it registers,
With
it
everybody.
resonates with
everybody.
locals. Yeah. So
Totally.
that's, bottom up. And
Yeah.
the idea came from, well, Megan Miller is her name, a fan of the team. I consider her a bit of an influencer. She was a season ticket holder from the Chicago Fire that I knew back then. And she had moved to Madison, and we were having beers at the University of Wisconsin Student Union, and we were talking about the names. I said, I don't think Flamingos is going to make it. Madison Flamingos was nominated. I think it's going to be Forward Madison. And she said, well, what's the icon going to be? What's the logo going to be for Forward? And I said, I don't know. She said, why not do a flamingo? And so it came from the fans.
Yeah. I mean, that's brilliant, right? Like, I think one of the great things, and I think this is part of the attractiveness of European soccer, is that I'm not saying not so. Although there is the history, right, of like the Barcelonas and the Real Madrids and like these big time clubs. You dive deep enough into some of those divisions, and there is some pretty wild history around local clubs, how they were formed, why they were formed, what is their, why are they in existence, and all of the things that happen. And so I'm totally tuned into it. I didn't know anything about Forward Madison and how it got created, but I guess the broader question I'd have, where, I mean, how did you, or where did you formulate this notion of this community based club? Or is it just some of the things that you learned because you've worked at every level?
Yeah, I think I certainly learned it over time, listening to people. I mean, I remember when I was in Minnesota with the Thunder,
Mm-hmm.
when the internet was just starting and being able to communicate with fans that way, and then also in person at games, standing with fans and listening to them and seeing what they want and then being able to help them get it. And then with the Chicago Fires, where it really, I think, cemented it in my head. And well, it goes back to a forum that's near and dear to your heart as well, and that's
Mm-hmm.
big
Big
soccer.
soccer, yeah, totally.
Big soccer
Transformational,
is,
by the way. My thesis, one of the most transformational platforms out there. But anyhow,